Kirby, hi, all good, thank you. A very different location today. I'm on a business trip in Germany and I'm in Landshut. Nobody actually knows where that is, but it's the closest thing that people here on this stream may or may not know is Munich Airport. So that's the reason why I have this crazy background. Can you see that? It's like
wow.
a thing from 1300 something.
Yo, that ceiling is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow.
There's a whole architecture conversation for probably some whole other channel, a whole other day, and a whole other lifetime. But like architecture is so phenomenal from, I mean, you're talking about 14th century, but even like 18th century, like so phenomenal, like so much care, finesse, thought, detail went into like old ass architecture. Like new stuff, it's like, it's beige, it's boxy, it's like no thoughts. It's all about function rather than beauty. Like
but at least they realized that a balcony would be nice to have in all this boxiness.
Yeah.
But the real question is, do you have AC? My guess is probably not. Well, do you need AC? It's March. I live in Florida. You don't need AC.
No, here in Landshut, the only thing that you actually have, they have a swimming. It's not a swimming pool. It's one of these. It's a pond, a swimming pond, I would say. So that's the closest we can get here to the sea. But other than that, it's very great today. No news, no good news. The spring is also not here. So anyway, and after our fantastic conversation, and by the way, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going back to Vienna and then from there back to London. So yeah, wow. Not good for my CO2 footprint, but you know, we are trying to develop something here.
Nice. And definitely want to chat about that. We had a chat whenever last time that was, a couple weeks ago. Could have been 2 years. Time does fly by. And yeah, I want to get into that. And first of all, thank you as well. Love to have you on. You're doing something I think is really cool that I know a little bit about. I want to learn more about. But before we get into that, I know you through Dan Garraway, who we had on maybe 3 episodes ago. And similar to Dan, which I said, I don't think I've seen you. I don't think I've ever been on a video call with you and you've been in the same location. And I might be able to say the same thing about you as well. I don't think you've ever been in the same room anytime I've ever spoken to you.
Good question. To be very honest.
More an observation.
To be very
I don't
honest,
know.
Yeah, I mean, today it's a coincidence, right? I as I mentioned, I have a meeting here in Landshut with a company called Highview. They're doing some really great content distribution and things like that. And they were asking me for a very, very long time to pop by, and I said this time I only can come if you guys allow me to break for at least an hour for Kirby's founder Fodder. So, and they said, yeah, well, you got it. And I said, but I need a room. And they said,
oh, wow.
Well, yeah, I'll take this one. And if you are interested, I mean, it looks pretty like very techy in here, right? There's all this stuff, but what nobody can actually see is this freaking phenomenal ceiling. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. And so, yeah, that's to your question. Have I ever been to in the same room while having a conversation with you? Your observation is probably right, but just for everybody here, not that listeners are getting the bad opinion about me. I actually not travel all the time, and my CO2 footprint is not that bad. So it's just really it's a time coincidence with the interviews with Kirby. But this time, 4 meter high ceilings. It's a very impressive location, but I'm just a guest here.
Nice. It is St. Patrick's Day, so happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we did name this thing at first, for lack of better terms, Friday Fodder. We changed it to Founder Friday because the theme is we've been speaking to founders. Like, they have the most interesting stories. We're founders ourselves. Tom's working on his latest venture. We both co-founded Float Left back in 2009, which built apps for like OTT streaming apps for obviously all the main culprits, connected TV mobile devices. And we're like, you know what? Friday kind of boxes us into a day. Let's rename this thing to Founder Friday. And glad we did, because it's Thursday. And I figure, hey, it's St. Patrick's Day. It's also the unofficial start of the NCAA basketball tournament. Let's bring in a guy from Warner Media, which is going to be streaming a bunch of games through TNT's TBS. I'm wearing my Michigan shirt. They're playing a little later, and but in reality, I'm going to New Orleans tomorrow, so I couldn't do this tomorrow. And also, you're 6 hours ahead of us. We normally do this around 2 p.m. our time. So that's like, I'm not going to ask you to Friday 8 o'clock your time to do this. So it all worked out.
I mean, as you know, sorry to interrupt, as you know, happy wife, happy life, right? Yeah. Friday, 8 p.m. is not a time where I will have a lot of friends at home, including my dog, Miss Maisel. So thanks.
Yeah, yes. And I will say, I mean, obviously I'm here, but yeah, the time shift and the day shift threw me a little bit. But hey, you know, it's all good. I mean, it's about accommodating our guests and when they can best be available. So we appreciate you, man.
No, thank you guys. Thank you very much.
Bernhard, you had, let's see, what is it, Mark? About a year ago, you were working at Warner Media, and you kind of had a choice. I love to hear kind of the whole, how you conceptualize Buffactory, what you're doing now, and how that whole idea came to be. But like a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, you had two choices. Like, choice one, man, I could move to Miami, hang out with Kirby all the time, work at Warner Media. And then option two, door number two, is like, hey, I should start something. So why don't you talk about that transition and kind of how Buffactory came to be, and then what Buffactory is also.
Of course, let's pause for a second. What Buffactory is, because we're gonna talk about that anyways. But I think this question, it puzzled me a lot. I can tell you guys, but it was actually a year ago. It's already 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago, right? That's how quickly time passes. But the situation was very, like, you know, very good for me. I got a new job at Warner Media for working as VP of strategy and business development for Latin America. A fantastic market, right? A lot of dynamic situations happening there. I love Latin America, right? Miami is the most northern Latin city in the world, people told me back in the day. And I said, you know what? That's actually a pretty interesting opportunity, right? And I signed the contract within the company, and you know, there were a lot of people supporting me, you know, figuring out making this decision, right? And including my partner Hannah. And you need to understand, it's a big thing for a European leaving the safe harbor of London, or, you know, one of the European cities, and go beyond the pond or across the pond to the United States, where things are different, right? And I was willing to take the risk. And people told me, Bernhard, you know, when you move to the US, there's always a risk. You go into a completely new environment, different people, and you need to be aware you are on your own there. Right? That was kind of the message, because it was working for HBO Latin America Group is almost like, it was a little, in comparison to big Warner Media, even though based in Miami, it was almost like a little startup 20 years ago. When they asked me to join them, they still were like 400 or 500 people in comparison to 30,000 worldwide from the entire Warner Media.
How many did you say?
Warner Media, yeah. I mean, when I started,
at LATAM,
500. 500. Yeah. So, in comparison, very small, right? And I said, yeah, I'll take the challenge. Love to hang out with Kirby and at the beach. And interestingly enough, it never happened, right? And I'm a planner, right? And that's I'm probably not the only one, but one of a few people who actually got impacted by Donald Trump's decisions of denying everybody's visas, right? So, and just in a time situation, I signed the contract in March. I should have started on 1st of June. So, I planned everything. I rented my apartment in London, right? And prepared everything. And then COVID hit, boom. And it was a week after I signed the contract. A week afterwards, it was the first day that I had to stay at home. So working from home, right? And everybody was still very positive. Bernhard, don't worry about it. We're gonna figure it out, right? So visa application, right? Which you need for the contract and all that sort of stuff. That the lawyers already, yeah, Bernhard, no worries. Super nice lawyer. Don't worry, you're a highly skilled individual. 2 weeks later, Trump signed no visas for everybody. So I was like, wait, guys. I rented out my apartment. I don't get the visa to go to the United States. I need to move out of my apartment. But what the hell is happening here, right? And so I needed to find, it's the most ridiculous situation, right? I needed to find an opportunity to live. And I didn't want to live in not my apartment in London. So I had the opportunity to go back to my hometown, which is Linz, where I had a living opportunity, but it was not ideal, right? So this whole thing with Corona, with the pandemic, it kind of threw me off track, completely threw me off track. And I also felt within Warner Media, right, that the transaction with AT&T and I'm obviously I'm not allowed to say anything, but it was not there was not a clear strategy in place, and I kind of felt, man, I now sit in Linz, which is a city nobody ever in the US has heard about it. I work for a company that is based in Miami, 6 hours ahead, for a continent of Latin America. I was just like working like a mine worker, right? Like, yeah, always during the night, completely tired. I couldn't see my family or Hannah, my dog. They never saw me, right? And I thought, is this the life I really, want to prolong? And nobody knew. Everybody thought after Corona hit the world that it's going to be over within a couple of months, right? And then it was going on and on and on and on. And I thought, that's very exhausting.
Bernhard, you were at Warner, obviously. You had the bulk of your career in terms of media had happened and developed at Warner, and then this opportunity had come up, and but basically coronavirus and COVID, it just kind of threw everything for a loop. But HBO LATAM was accommodating you in terms of like obviously you can't be here, but we're going to set you up and you're going to be able to be. But to your point, that's a hard lifestyle, right? Because of just the time schedule and everything.
Tom, absolutely right. Look, the company, and especially my former boss, Emilio Rubio, who was the CEO of HBO Lag, they did everything to make me happy, guys. Literally everything. But when you're there, when you get off your last call at 4 a.m. Central European time, and you have a moment, you go down to the kitchen or you go around the corner, yeah, right, hear the dog snoring, right, and you have I always needed some time to wind down, right, and you start to think, yeah, is this what I want? Is this the right lifestyle? Yeah. And maybe 10 years ago I would have said, hey, yo, let's do it, right? But situations generally change, and I felt that I also needed a change. Yeah, and I also felt that, these mergers, they are very complicated. I mean, everybody knows that in theory, but if you went through a merger like multiple times, like I did, and I actually was affected twice by Donald Trump, right? First, he was blocking the CNN AT&T merger, or that at that time Time Warner Inc. and AT&T merger, which didn't last, a year or 18 months. It lasted almost 3 years. Yeah, it was the first time. Then finally it got over. Then Corona hit, and with all the visa stuff going on, so twice affected by him. And in the summer, yeah, I started to think. I was always very much interested in advertising, and one of the main things in media is, especially in pay TV, is advertising, right? So a bulk of the money these companies like Warner, Disney, ABC, etc., make is from advertising, right? And I was always interested, and I thought, is there not something, right, that I can do? Maybe try something new, right? Try something new, and if I don't, and I always had that in my mind, if I don't do it now, I maybe not gonna try it. Yeah, and Kirby knows me by now well enough that I really like to do things, right? I want to try new things out, and I thought, you know what, my partner and I, we don't have kids as of yet, except a dog. Yeah, and I thought, if I don't do something now, if I don't try something new out right now, I might not do it again. And so then I started to look into that field, because media is so exciting. There are so many new things. And I wanted to stay in media, because Warner Media is a fantastic company gives you a lot of opportunity and a lot of insights. And I couldn't be happier and more proud of being 6 years with them. But I thought, you know what, I want to stay in media. I want to do something new. And then I started to look, what are the opportunities? Where are the opportunities? And always with the thought behind, or keeping it in my mind, that knowing that media more and more becomes a global business, right? That the scale and the size, yeah, and the development, the platforms, Netflix and Amazon, and all these guys are developing. They are built for global scale, and I thought, you need to have this in mind. If you do something new, if you do something that can have an impact, yeah, and yeah, and then Buffactory came to my mind, and all the topic around gaming and in-game advertising and stuff like that. Does that answer your question? I know that was a long monologue, basically 10 minutes, but sorry for that.
No, so Bernhard, just real quick. So what's your educational background, or you're just like, how did you come up? What's your core competency? Is it more technical? Is it more, you're obviously you present very well, you speak very well. Are you more on the sales side? What's your background? I don't want to make any assumptions. I'm just saying that's just my observation.
Funny question, Tom. Funny question, I have to say. So my background. So I studied business economics at the University of Linz, and was a little bit abroad, but nothing to mention. But my alma mater, as you call your home university, is Johannes Kepler University. And what people normally don't know, the system is a little bit different here in Europe. And one thing that drove me all my life was politics, to be very honest. Yeah, so I'm not keeping it a secret. So here I'm in Europe, you would say a social democrat, so Labour or the Democrats. This is I was political active a long time. So I started already when I was a pupil, so a student in high school, and this basically kept me engaged, in different activities than school or university my entire life. And before I started to work for Warner, I was also something like a chief of staff of the Education, Arts and Culture Minister in Vienna, and it was media from a different perspective, right? And my education, so business economics, is a very broad education. It's almost like, you can do almost anything afterwards. And I was always, because all these things around what's happening with people around the world or in your community was a driving force behind my political engagement. There was a result that I got elected at the university for a student council and stuff like that, and led at the very end to my job at the ministry. However, I was during my university, during the time of my university, which is also different than what you guys know in the US, right, or in the Anglo-Saxon area, that you have something like a minimum education duration, but it's totally up to you how fast you are or how slowly. So I was founding already a few companies, also in advertising and communication, and so that kind of all these things add up to my background, why I worked for Warner and how it came about. But if you ask me what my core competence is, my core competence, I would see myself as communication, and I like negotiating, but negotiating with an outcome that affects or has at heart a situation where both parties win. And I always wanted to work at sales, but never one of my employers allowed me to work in sales. But I really like sales, so I don't know. Maybe it's twofold. But I'll see. But how this evolves.
But it's a powerful combination of skills, both practical and actually in the workforce, but also just inherent in you that give you the ability to be, move the things that you're moving around, starting a new company. That takes a lot of diverse skills that don't always seem like they're connected. That's just so fascinating about, entrepreneurs and founders that are building companies, that they're pulling all of this experience that seems completely disjointed, but it sort of comes together at the right moment. And that's really interesting. Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so.
So you said you're a planner, Bernhard, and obviously COVID threw a wrench in your plans, and so I don't know what the other options could have been if you didn't start your own thing. But for somebody that likes to plan, just curious. And you mentioned so Buffactory is not your first company. You had mentioned you started some prior and also in advertising.
Yes, I mean it was back in 2007, I think. Can't tell you exactly, and it was something, there were these fancy cameras coming out from Sony, the first cameras that actually were affordable, something like $1,500, $2,000, that had HD quality or television quality, right? And there were these people that were called video journalists, right? That were able to film and cut and produce basically a little clip by themselves. And this was my first venture. It was called Flimmerfrei, which doesn't really matter, but it's basically, if you translate it correctly, it doesn't. How should you say? It's basically HD. It doesn't have any snow. When
right.
Back in the years, there were these like white, gray, black dots.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And the flickering, without flickering, you would translate it, right? And I really liked that. It was a cool product, but again, it was back in the day when nobody really they looked at me, and this was before. You need to understand, this was before iPhone and smartphones and all that stuff, right? So this was also very pioneer work, and it was. I can tell you guys, it was, groundwork. I had to explain to employers or to other people or to companies why they would need a digital video. And you guys in the US, you were always a little ahead of these kind of things. So probably you were there already 2005. But a small market like Austria, and it was tough. Yeah, I managed to sell it. Yeah, I didn't make a profit at all, except blood, tears, and sweat. But they integrated it into an advertising agency, and it's fine.
So way ahead of it. Yeah, it's interesting when you have to sell. You have the solution for a problem that no one understands that even exists. You have to say, well, no, actually, trust me, there is an actual problem.
Yeah.
Here's the solution. So that's interesting. So,
but it reminds me what I do today a little bit. All this groundwork as well, but obviously, the 15 years back 15 years, I learned a lot about how to approach maybe certain problems. And back in the day, at the age of 23 or 22, I was not thinking of what, let's just get an investor in. And by the way, that's also not something that happens regularly in I would say even in the German-speaking area, right? That you get venture capital in or angels that help to scale something, right? This was like, let's do it ourselves, let's try, right?
Yeah.
But I would consider today that it was a failure, right? But a good failure in a way, because I learned a lot, how things work, and I
100%.
still love the project, even though I would today consider it as a failure. But things that's how it is. It's not always linear, and it's not always like a huge success. But it shapes also your personality. That's how I feel about it.
I think that's so important. You said that, and I mean, I had what you just said about you considering it a failure, but there's a lot of things that weren't a failure that you extracted from that. Is we had Fred Godfrey from Origin on last week, and he talked about his first business. He was basically pilfering his own mom's jewelry, and then ultimately mom had to go buy it back from everybody he sold it to. And then I mean, big or little, I think all of these businesses, legit or not, or like Fred's thing when he started, he's probably 7 years old. Like there's all, I think, things we could take away from each of those. But my question to you was, and I'll still ask you, you said it's a failure, but is it really? I mean, you sold the company. There's probably so much great insight you got from that experience and then also I bring up Fred because somebody did ask him about two companies he mentioned he'd started before Origin. They asked, would you consider those failures? And then he pretty much said, no, they weren't failures. Maybe they didn't sell to Microsoft or whatever it is, but just the lessons and experience he learned from those, then that take was, you know what, that was not, absolutely not a failure. And I mean, would you, if I gave you a chance to re-answer that question, would you consider that first venture a failure?
I think I would diversify my answer, right? I would diversify, and I would say I invested a lot of time and also money, and I would not say that it was break even, okay? Even though there was something like a US dollar amount at the end. Yeah, but it was not break even. It was not that I say, yeah, right?
Yeah.
But the lessons and the experience, right? I mean, who has the chance at the age of, I don't know, 24 or whatever, to negotiate not a distribution deal, but something like where a series of videos, right? Who does that? How to approach it? Yeah, who or what's the price point, right? You also want to make a little bit of profit. Yeah. They had and about the product that nobody knows, right? Where you need to argue and say, guys, this is really great. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can embed it in Facebook, and it's a super. It's for your brand. It's great, right? And so, from the experience side, to your point, Kirby, obviously it was not a failure, but I think it taught me a lot, and being humble about what you do and what you're trying to achieve is something that I also learned from that, because I thought it's gonna fly like this, right? And to be very clear, everybody thinks that, and I thought it too, right?
Yeah.
At the age of 24 or whatever, you think that, right? And it's a bit harder than that.
Yeah, I think every entrepreneur has to have an absurd amount of optimism, right? Like ridiculous optimism. And I think everybody has to go into it with this idea that this is most likely going to fail. I mean, if it may not fail, the idea may be great, but maybe the timing is wrong, or maybe maybe this is just outside of what I'm able to do, with my background, and maybe I can't find the right partners to get involved. Like, there's so many things that go on, but I think it's primarily upside if you look at it like, even if it is a failure, assuming that you're not putting yourself into financial ruin. Most of that is, like you said, I mean, these are lessons that you can take and you can apply to the next one and to the next one. And I also think, just to wrap this up, I think that it's clear based on your background that people think that they need to have certain types of skills or things that maybe they're wanting to start a business, but they don't feel like that they're qualified, or that they don't feel like that they have enough experience in certain areas. But you've proven that there's so many things that you've brought to the table based on so many things that you've done in your past, and different experience that you've had, your education and your work experience, that it's so different. I mean, it's so diversified. The attributes that make a good entrepreneur and a good person that should be doing businesses and things like that. So that's interesting. It's a very interesting story. Your background.
If I can, there's one thing I really thought a lot about it in the past. So I'm allowed, one of my friends, he's a professor at the university, and he asked me if I would wanna teach a course in organizational theory, where I have a background in, right? And I was a lot, the last couple of years, thinking about what is the skill set, right, that helped me on a meta level, right? If you look from the bird's perspective down, what are the skills that helped me the most? And I have to say, the skill set that helped me the most, and that sounds so ridiculous because I'm now, doing stuff, right? But that are theoretical, very high level, that I can apply. These skills I can apply to so many different things and are not nitty gritty. Yeah. So yes, I learned accounting at university. Okay. I learned it before, but man, it's knowledge that I can, if I go to whatever, right, to YouTube, and I watch a video, I refresh these skills, and they don't matter to me because it's so standardized. It's so deep in the knowledge, in the theory. But the more high level it is, yeah, the more I can apply that to other areas of business, of life, or whatever, right? To understand how
100%.
two individuals communicate, right, and work with each other. This is the knowledge that helps me the most, really. It is, and for me, I learned all that stuff, how individual groups and organizations work and how that interlinks. This is the knowledge that I appreciate the most and helped me the most, because I can apply it. I could apply it in politics,
100%.
at Warner. I can apply it now, but in a different context. But the basis, the foundation is the same. And if I would give somebody a recommendation, what to study or learn, or get the skills, I would say the more skills you can acquire that are transferable, the better it is for whatever you do.
Could not add anything else to that. It's perfect. Completely nailed it. I think the communication, the interpersonal communication with others, how to convey a complex idea in simple terms, to be concise, to speak effectively, and to communicate effectively, I think is for me personally the root of almost everything that you do. I mean, so anyway, good stuff. Good stuff.
Oh, I do want to chat about. Bernhard, did you say you can't? What? Well, why don't you tell me what you can or cannot talk about, what you're working on with Buffactory, and I definitely want to speak about it because we were talking about your other venture and explaining to people that there is a need, and I kind of feel like what you're doing is similar in that there's a lot of explaining you have to do to a lot of people to show the cool shit you're doing. So what can you tell us about Buffactory?
I can tell you a lot, but before I tell you in detail, I want to tell you what drove me in the direction of gaming, right? Because HBO is known for a lot of things, but not necessarily for gaming, right?
Perfect. Yeah, I this was obviously like the first thing I was thinking about, like how did this transition even happen? So looking forward to hearing this. Yeah.
Thanks. So I had a colleague and a friend at Red Bull, right? And he was always telling me about the problem Red Bull has, to advertise in big scale, right? And I always was smiling a little bit, and I always said, yeah, because you're not advertising with us, right? With Warner Media, so that's your problem, right? But kidding aside, this question, this problem from Red Bull at that time, was really puzzling me. I think, well, how is that possible? There's so much reach out there. You can do so many things. Why? And the more, even though I worked in business development and strategy, right? Where research is obviously a crucial part of it. And I thought, how can he not get the reach he wants? And I realized the more and more I looked into that is especially maybe with a little asterisk, right? Especially on the big screen. He was talking about, reach on the big screen. And if you look at the media landscape, no matter where, in the US, obviously driven from the US, this change of cord cutting and all that stuff. But linear distribution and content distribution on the big screen via satellite, IP, or wherever is declining. That's a matter of fact. Now we can say some of this content distribution is now taken by Netflix and Amazon and all the other digital guys, right? And you can say that's a great thing because the consumer is in the center and everybody can, and so on and so forth. Yeah. But I was thinking more about the advertiser, right? I was like, that's great for the consumer, but the advertiser has a significant problem, right? If the fragmentation of the content distribution or the product for the advertiser, where he wants to show his product, right? The Red Bull can or the Coke or whatever it is, the limitation is going to increase. He has a limitation, or the advertiser itself has a limitation of advertising his or her brand to the audience. Because if a lot of people go to SWOT or whatever and pay for it, the fragmentation is just increasing. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, and I know that the advertisers love to pay premiums for the big screen, right? The center of the home, right? If you are there, that's how it is. That's how it should be. And in that process, I realized that one of the main things in the center of the home is used, that the screen is used for, is gaming. The kids, the teenagers, they want to play their freaking Gran Turismo 7, their Street Fighter on the biggest possible screen, because that increases the experience, right? And I'm not, again, talking about, that there's big screens for computer games, etc., etc. Very important, but this was not what was driving my thinking, right? And I thought, if we can manage, right, to actually allow advertisers to do campaigns on a weekly, monthly, daily, whatever basis, I thought, you know what, they would love it. They would love to have the attention, because if you're when you're gaming, you have the attention on the screen. You don't look at the phone on the second screen, right? All these topics that linear television and the big screen, even Netflix has the same problem, right? And Kirby told me once, yeah, but when I look at something, I already look on Instagram or wherever if there's an opportunity to buy, right? And this problem from the advertiser side drove me to think about gaming and advertising in a combination with the big screen, right? And that was kind of the starting point. And so, to be very honest, it's not solved yet.
It's not what? I'm sorry.
It's not solved. The problem is not solved yet.
So something, Bernhard, that you just said really just kind of blew my mind. The fact that you're so right, and this is so relevant to me just personally right now. We're out in the living room, on the big screen with the kids playing, playing video games, right? And the fact that you are staring at the screen, the fact that you're not, when you're in the midst of it, and you don't have the tendency to look to your left or right and pick up your phone, and that is incredible, actually. The attention span and the way that you frame that up, I think, is really, really interesting. So I don't know if that was. It sounds like there's a few things that are driving this idea for you, but that's one of the that one resonated with me the most. That one really hit me. That at that moment during that time period, you have their undivided attention. For the most part, that they're not going to be distracted for the most part. That's really interesting.
Glad that you like the background story, right? And it obviously continues, right? So this was basically the hook. I said, yeah, you know what? It's interesting. It's interesting. That's very interesting. So what I did is I had a few conversations, obviously, and I learned a very, very interesting thing that I couldn't believe myself, coming from media, right? Where the proudest thing anybody in the industry can say is, I work in media, right? I work in the media industry. And game publishers, per definition, do not think that they are media. And that was completely crazy for me. I was like, wow. You guys have probably one of the biggest reach on the planet, and you do not see yourself as a media company is fascinating. This is a fascinating fact, right? Wow. Yeah. So, and then I thought, okay, let me investigate it. And then I realized, so I was diving into the topic, and I was realizing that, like always, people are way ahead of the curve, and there are much smarter people out there than I am, and they already started to have conversations with big gaming publishers and talking about inventory, right? That made me happy and sad at the same time. It made me sad because somebody was smarter. Happens all the time. So I could actually get over it quite soon. And happy because I thought, you know what? I don't need to work. I don't need to do the groundwork. Because let me be very clear. And I realized that over the last couple of weeks. So I'm almost a year in my venture. And I realized that the last couple of weeks. And the reason why these people, I always call them ad tech providers, yeah, or technology providers, why they were ahead of the curve, because they realized that there's such a huge problem that is actually worth working on. And the problem was placing an ad right? Whatever the ad is, it's not this traditional ad format that we are used from the big screen. Placing an ad into a three-dimensional digital space that looks every time differently. Meaning every game has a different three-dimensional graphic design. And I realized that this is so complex that I would have never ever came up with this solution, right? So there are 2-3 in the world that are actually focusing on solving the problem. And then I realized that because they are so focused on that problem, that they forget that they work in the media industry, right? And the media industry is all about KPIs and CPMs and all these kind of things that brands are willing to spend money on. And if you don't provide that, they're not going to buy, even though they would love to. But if you don't explain to them what they actually get for their money, they are not going to, they stick to what they know, right? Advertisers stick to what they know. So I can get the banner for $3.50 CPM. That's measurable. That's my KPIs. I need to hit them. I'll stick with it because this gaming thing is too new. And I saw that every supply, right? Every supply in a single, as a single entity is a problem. It's a problem. It was the same with digital advertising back in the days. There was, if there's only 5 web pages that allow banner ads or video ads, nobody cares. It took 15 years to develop that. And so I was thinking, okay, these guys, they're doing such a tremendous job, and all the props, if somebody watches, all the props to them, it's incredible what they do, right? And I realized, okay, you know what? I'm the person coming in, or Buffactory is the organization, or that we define that as our vision, right? And I'm talking now about our vision, is to create an easy, accessible in-game advertising category. And this easy accessibility is the key. What we want to do is to create, basically to aggregate in-game advertising supply. That's what we want to do. And make it easy accessible, right? And that's where I'm coming from, and how I thought, and big screens and all that stuff, where everything comes together. And I think, you know what, it's actually very interesting, especially with one additional footnote, is digital three-dimensional space transferability. What is reminding you of? It's the metaverse, right? If I can do it in games, I can do it in freaking metaverse. It doesn't matter.
100%.
However, I don't know what the metaverse yet is, right? People talking a lot of stuff. So I want to focus on that element, right? So that as soon as it's defined, I already have a solution that I can roll out to whatever it is, right? And that is just something that I have in mind, and I'm working on.
Bernhard, this is amazing. I mean, it's really interesting, and there's a few games that I've seen my son play where the characters are just walking through like streets. They're just walking down the street, and there are billboards, and there are signs on the windows, and they're walking past. They're just they're not being
Fake.
utilized, but that is a perfect opportunity, and it may not hit you in the face like a traditional, like you were just describing, the ad breaks that we get today with TV. But it's subliminal almost to the fact, right? Like where you see this over and over again, and you're interacting in this environment that when you think about, I'm thirsty, maybe that for some reason pops into your mind. Who knows how that works? But I know that it does. Well, we've seen that before, and I think you're building a platform for the metaverse, which is really interesting. That was actually, as you were talking about that environment, I was thinking, I wonder how this would apply, but even more so, I mean, you're involved. You're essentially in an alternate reality. You're inside of a digital reality. So I would imagine that you're going to be walking down somewhere and seeing things, and just like you would in real life. That's as It's pretty cool. Very good. Very cool. Congratulations, man. It sounds like it's an amazing.
Let's see how it goes.
Yeah, it goes.
It's super interesting.
It's a worthy problem. It's a worthy opportunity. And if you don't do it, I'm sure someone will, be thinking about trying how to figure this out. So at some point.
I'm going to say something. I'm going to say two things that contradict each other. When I hear people don't like advertising, I'll easily say people don't hate advertising. My comment that contradicts that is advertising sucks. It's a necessary evil. And I think what I mean by that, and Tom, you said the word subliminal, is, do you know what sucks? So this is a book about the Brooklyn Dodgers. The first video ad was served in 1941 from a Brooklyn Dodgers Phillies game. 81 years later, we're still showing the same format. Like, innovation has basically been from merging from like cable and satellite, moving the same tech, generally speaking here, of course, to internet delivery. There are so many different types of advertising that can be done that are just not jolting to the user experience. If I'm playing a first-person game and I'm walking down a street and I see a billboard from Coke, meanwhile, my son's playing the same game upstairs and he goes down the same street, he sees one for Pepsi. Like, that is not in your face. That is I don't know if subliminal is the right word in the whatever. It's subconscious. Like, it's not jarring. It is part of the user experience. And by that, I think advertising is absolutely phenomenal. And just to go from like a TV standpoint, there's so much, and we were talking about this last week, there's so much more that I think can be done. That's not just like, hey, let's interrupt your program. Here's 60 minutes for you to listen about something that has nothing to do with the content you were just watching.
But Kirby, I would say you're absolutely right. I think that if, as a consumer, and I think, obviously the social platforms do this really well, right? So they know what I'm looking for, and then they show me things that I'm interested in. And I've had, especially as I've been building a new business and I've been doing more research for that, I'm seeing things on these platforms where I'm going, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, I need that information that this person is providing. And so in that way, it's helpful. Advertising is actually helping me learn about something that I'm interested in. 100%. So, but to your point, it's in the delivery, and it's in this shotgun approach that is just terrible and needs disruption, right?
And I think it's important because I think this was like maybe yesterday, Unity published a trends report predicting the gaming industry is going to be worth $300 billion by 2027. So we're talking 5 years from now. And I think that's important because the people that are playing the games the most right now are going to be millennial Gen Z. Those cohorts are also the people that, if you want to generalize that cohort, they hate ads. But back to my point, they don't hate ads. They hate bullshit ads. And what you're working on is, yes, it's advertising, but it's a whole different category that's part of the user experience. It's not jarring, and that's acceptable. I don't think anybody's going to be upset that, oh man, Mountain Dew paid for that ad. I hate it. Like,
yeah, something's going to be on that sign, right? It's either going to be a completely made up thing, or it's going to be something of value, right?
Yep. Sell it.
Yeah, and Bernhard, I think one of the things that you're also, and again, maybe this isn't necessarily what you're leading with in terms of, your vision, what's driving it, but certainly one of the byproducts of what you're doing is figuring out how to make advertising more integrated,
appealing. Appealing, integrated, relevant. I always say we are trying by building this new or making this in-game advertising category more accessible, easily accessible. We are making it more relevant, right? And back to the Red Bull question is, and this is just, it didn't exist. I just wanna tell you what I'm thinking of, right? I read when Gran Turismo, the car game on PlayStation, launched the other day. I read an article about Gran Turismo 5, so the predecessor, right? And they had 12 million unique players playing that for 5-6 years. And Sony is expecting 20 million players playing Gran Turismo 7. Now, we can say that's a lot or not. it's a 20 million on a global scale that spend X hours per week. You definitely are not going to reach them via an ad on a linear program. You're not going to reach them on Netflix. You might reach them on Twitch or any other digital platform, but it's not relevant. Relevant to this person, to this player, is when he's doing what he likes, because nobody's forcing this person to play this game. And when you do something smart, when you place a smart ad or a funny one or something that's, again, relevant, you can reach theoretically 20 million people, and very targeted. And I think this is what I like, right? I don't want to, I'm a consumer myself, right? And sometimes I find advertising ridiculous, right? Sometimes I really love it, yeah. And what I really like, as Tom just described, is when it helps me, right? When I get, oh, this is a new product, it's just cool, right? To get you actually broaden your horizon about things that exist on the planet. And I think that's the reason why advertising is very important. Otherwise, probably Apple products would have never made it, and all the other cool stuff we are using today, and we would have never come to fruition. And the goal here is to create something for people that is relevant to them. Not the most relevant. Let's be honest. Advertising can never be the most relevant thing in your life, but relevant. Relevant is good, and this is something that I think is around Kirby's contradiction of liking, they don't hate it, but they find it crap, and this.
If you served it up in a better way, I would connect with it and I would like it.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah, relevance.
Right.
It's about relevance and serving people. So I like it. I like it. We love it in our company. We're a couple of people, right? Five full times, a few freelancers. Yeah. So all in all, something like 10 people. And yeah, we are raising now in the next few weeks some more capital, because we have the first significant development stage for our platform. And yeah, we're super excited, and yeah, everybody who wants to help us, great.
If you want to invest, how do people how should people contact and learn more about Buffactory, especially for the investors that are going to help with that raise?
Give me a call or just write me an email or on LinkedIn or wherever. It's all good. And again, to my point at the beginning of our conversation, it was, for me, it's about creating something that is beneficial for both parties, right? So obviously I love people with some background that where I can learn from, where my team can learn from, and yeah, that's what it is. There is no wish list. I would like to have Apex, or I don't know, whatever these big guys are doing. Is really more about a partnership and something that in economic language you would call Pareto efficient situation. So win-win, to be very honest.
Awesome.
Right on.
Congrats,
Bernhard. Yeah, definitely. Congrats, and wishing you nothing but success, nothing less. And appreciate your time. I'm also cognizant of your time, and that company might want their room back. There's like 13 engineers been in the hallway for an hour trying to get their room back. Definitely want to thank you for joining us today.
It was a pleasure. Nice to meet you, Tom. Kirby, always great to chat, and thanks very much. And I'm looking forward to hearing more of Founders Fodder. And great work, and I find it a great show, and thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure, and speak to you soon. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Bernhard.
Bye-bye.